iOS developers, don't you wish the designers you worked with could speak SwiftUI? Like they understood HStacks, VStacks, scroll views, and they even designed their screens using those native SwiftUI components. Like tab bar and nav bar, so you don't have to deal with crazy custom navigation. SF symbols, native pickers, maps, charts. And what if they used a design tool that had Apple's human interface guidelines baked right in? So they stick with iOS best practices and they don't go off reinventing the wheel, making you build all sorts of custom components. Because you know, SwiftUI is amazing when you stay within the guardrails of SwiftUI. And those guardrails are pretty flexible, but as long as you stay within those guardrails, life is good. So how awesome would it be if your designer also used a tool that kept them within those guardrails? And Play is a design tool that does exactly that and a whole lot more. By designing the app in Play using those native SwiftUI components, now you and your designer, you speak the same language, which improves your communication, which is going to improve your relationship. You're going to shorten that feedback loop cycle. You're just going to become a well-oiled machine working with your designer. You can run their designs right on your device to really get a feel for how the design and the interactions work. And you can even generate SwiftUI code to export right into Xcode to speed up your workflow. So if you're building a SwiftUI app with a designer, Play is a game changer and a no-brainer. So have your designer go check out their website or check out this video, because in this video, I'm gonna walk you through the product and show you all these benefits. Now, I discovered Play because a bunch of iOS devs on Twitter or X were tweeting about the cool designs they were putting out, and I was really impressed. So I reached out to them and it's like, hey, let's work together on a video. So here we are, and I wanna thank Play for sponsoring today's video. All right, let me show you this thing in action. All right, I'm in Play's native Mac app, and the first thing we're gonna talk about are these native components. If you click the magnifying glass down here, you get the library of components, and it's the greatest hits of SwiftUI components, right? Text, image, SF symbols. And Play is shipping like crazy. For example, they just shipped new animations for SF symbols. So I expect this library to grow a lot over time. But again, you got the greatest hits, all the layouts, the VStacks, the HStacks, the spacers, all the controls, slider, switch, segmented control, text field, all the pickers, classic SwiftUI button, gauges, charts, maps. So as you can see, your designer can really build a full screen, again, speaking your language, SwiftUI. This is the big benefit of Play, is getting the developer and the designer on the same page to just work a hell of a lot more efficiently. And one of the ways they do that, which I love, is baking Apple's human interface guidelines right into the product. So for example, let's say your designer is gonna add a bar chart to your app. They can click on the info button, go right to the design guidelines, and boom, pops up human interface guidelines right to the charts. So they can scroll through. What are iOS best practices for building a chart? How do I design effective charts with visual examples? And that's what I love about the HIG, very visual. I think your designer will like that too. So cool, we got best practices, but even better, back in Play, they can also go to the documentation. Click the I, see documentation. Now I know it's probably a stretch to expect your designer to read code documentation. I am not saying that at all. But in the example of Swift charts, you can see what's possible, right? We have like area mark, line mark, point mark, bar mark, sector mark. So this would prevent them, again, keeping them within the guardrails of SwiftUI, from going off and designing some insane, crazy custom chart that now you have to build from scratch, and now your life is miserable. They will now know the capabilities of Swift charts. Again, big picture, they're not gonna know the code. But again, this keeps them within the guardrails of SwiftUI, making your life easier. And I think most importantly, eliminating that back and forth, right? Let's play this out. The designer goes off and designs some crazy, custom, awesome chart. They hand it to you, you look at it and you're like, I'm gonna have to build this custom. If we can stay within Swift charts, it's really gonna save so much time. And we get all the accessibility benefits and looking great on all platforms that Swift charts gives us, right? You gotta make your argument of why we should use Swift charts and not build our own thing. And that's a whole back and forth. And sometimes those types of conversations are difficult. So again, by baking in the human interface guidelines, linking to the documentation, the idea here is that you and your designer now speak the same language and you both agree, we're staying within the guardrails of SwiftUI, and this just makes things so much smoother. Another example of that is navigation patterns, which Play has the default iOS navigation patterns baked right in. So let's go to our recipes screen here that has the nav bar and tab bar. And if I click on the screen here, over on the right, you can see I can toggle on and off navigation bar and tab bar, just like that. And then within the tab bar, you can see I can change the SF symbols for selected and unselected. But the point is, right, how many times have you been given a custom tab bar to build or a custom nav bar, right? The designer just wants to flex their design muscles rather than sticking with iOS best practices. But if you use Play, all that stuff is baked right into the design tool. And you can see adding a nav bar and a tab bar is the click of a button. You don't have to redesign this. Don't reinvent the wheel. And when I said reinventing the wheel kind of triggered a thought that I remembered is Play also just shipped importing from Figma. So let's say your designer already has your app designed in Figma. They can import that now right into Play. So you can start this process of getting on the same page and working with SwiftUI components, even if they've already designed the app in Figma. Another common issue Play can solve is various screen sizes. So let's go to our Discover screen here, typical Tinder-like card swiping interaction. But over on the right here, you see I'm on the iPhone 15 Pro, which is typically what designers will design for. But as you know, Apple has all kinds of device sizes, and I know personally I've run into so many issues where it's like, yeah, this design looks great on the big phones, the iPhone 15, but what about this pesky iPhone 8 that has the smaller screen in the chin? Well, as you can see right in Play, you can preview all kinds of devices. What about the bigger phone, the iPhone 15 Pro Max? You can see that it looks great there. And the point here is that these issues are solved at design time, right? It's on your designer to make sure their design looks great on all devices, whether it's the big one or the old school phones. Because again, if you play that out, they hand you just one design. Now you go build it, and being the good developer you are, you're testing it on all different devices, making sure it looks good. And then you run into the iPhone 8 and you're like, hey, designer, this looks like crap on this phone. Let's go back and redesign this. And again, you're going back and forth. And that's the whole point of Play, is to just eliminate that back and forth and solve so many issues at design time, which again, just makes the whole team run a lot smoother. Another way Play can make your developer life so much easier is you can run these design prototypes right on device. You can share them via app clip, or you can build it right from the design tool. So here I'm in the Play app, and you can see I get the button there, connect to Mac OS. So I'm gonna connect to Mac OS. You're gonna see my phone up off to the side here. All right, I'm connected, tells me how to interact with the object. Got it, but you see it went right to the screen that I'm looking at. But I can navigate around, right? The tab bar, go back to the home screen. There's our home screen. Here's our feeds. All right, you can scroll through the video feeds, go to the Discover screen, that's where I was on. Go back to groceries, so you can see where to pick up your groceries with the native maps, right? And I can interact with it. So that's the key here, is seeing these interactions on your device, because seeing it on a screen is one thing, but playing with it, interacting with it, like that is a totally different experience. So you can see how these animations actually feel. And we are linked up. When I click on the Where tab up here, you see I switch to the map on my phone. Let's click on Feeds. Boom, I switched to the feeds on my phone. Oh, that's not very aligned. But the point is, you are synced up. So if you were making changes, they would update real time on your device. But again, the huge benefit there is just interacting in real time with the phone to get a feel for how the app is actually supposed to work, rather than just looking at a static screen. And these prototypes can easily be shared via app clip if you want some other members of the team to play around with the app to give some feedback as well. And speaking of those interactions, you see here, I'm gonna get off the iPhone 8 because that just PTSD, I don't like that, yeah. Stay modern, right? I'm gonna zoom in a little bit here, but let's talk about the state manager, because sometimes you'll get a design and it's just the static default state. Well, Play allows you to break out the states of an interaction. For example, this swipe to delete interaction. If I click on this cell, make it main, you can see I get the default state, the swipe left state, and the starred state. Because as you know, a screen is not static. It exists in multiple different states. So not only, like I just showed, you can actually play with it on device to see the states, but the states are also broken out in the state manager. As you see, here's the default state, here's what you see as you're swiping left, here's what you see when it's actually starred. Again, making your developer life so much easier. Speaking of that, the last bonus, the little cherry on top for you, you can export SwiftUI code right into Xcode. So if I click on this little red card here, let's click on it up here. Over here in the code, I'm gonna expand this, but I get the code for that, the SwiftUI code. Now I'm gonna take the whole content view because it is just this red rounded rectangle. Now, you know, Play's not gonna name your stuff for you, but I have this whole struct that can be a reusable view for this red card view. So I'm gonna click here, you can see it on there, code copied. Let's tab over into Xcode. You see, I just have a brand new file. You see, it's called Play Export Hello World. I haven't done anything, just a brand new SwiftUI project. So I'm gonna highlight my whole content view, paste that in there, and you can see I get the big chunk of code. Now I do know I'm gonna need the hex colors. So back here, this color extension, they give that to you too. So click on that, code copied, back to Xcode. I'm gonna put it in the same file just to save a little time. And then I didn't bring over the safe area top variable, so we're gonna get rid of that because we don't need it. But as you can see on my preview, there's the view, just like that. Took 2 seconds, and a huge benefit here. Look, H-stack alignment top spacing. I know it's font weight semi-bold. I see the opacities, I see the background colors and corner radius, right? I didn't have to go back and forth looking at all these little values as I built it. So this is a huge, huge time saver. Now, of course, you're gonna have to tweak and adjust the code because we all have different coding styles, coding philosophies, you know, what modifiers we like to use, how we like to name things. So of course, you're gonna have to sculpt it and make it your own. But you just saw that took like 2 seconds. I copied the code and look at my preview. I just think Play is awesome. If you're building a SwiftUI app and working with a designer, it's a no-brainer tool. And again, I think my favorite part of it, back to play, is the human interface guidelines built right in. So a lot of issues and problems when it comes to staying within iOS best practices are solved right at design time. You don't have to do that back and forth with your designer, which makes your team way more efficient, improves your relationship with the designer because you also speak the same language now, a little bonding experience. But yeah, like I said, if you're building a SwiftUI app, working with a designer, this is a must. So go talk to your designer, have them check out createwithplay.com. Here's their website, or send them to this video. I think you'll be very happy you did.